Hello, I'm Victor Hawkstrom, and welcome to another edition of One-on-One. After years of living in various parts of the world and roaming America by motorcycle, Paul Dorrell returned to Kansas City. In 1991, he opened the Leopold Gallery in Brookside to have a cool place in which to write. He has worked as a consultant for the National D-Day Memorial, as well as for clients like Warner Brothers and Steven Spielberg. He has also helped regional artists find homes for their work in the new H&R Block headquarters and the Sprint Center. Today we get a unique perspective of the Kansas City art scene from a man immersed in it. Paul, welcome to One-on-One.
It's a pleasure to be here, Victor.
We have a piece for the first time on our desk. Let's talk about it first, because I'm sure people are wondering, just what is this? It is beautiful, I may add.
Sure. This is a blown glass plate by Tom Bloyd. His studio's in the Crossroads. He's a glass artist who studied at University of Kansas. He's originally from Kansas City. And this is one of nearly 300 such plates of varying colors, mostly round, some are oblong, that are hanging to compose one enormous glass sculpture at Sprint Center, almost 3,000 pounds of blown glass hanging from the ceiling of the main concourse. So if you trust my engineering abilities, you'll walk beneath it. If you don't, you better walk around it just in case a plate falls. But I can guarantee you one won't fall. And the beautiful thing about it is they all hang freely so they can twist and turn in the air currents.
You know, art requires several academic disciplines, doesn't it?
Monumental work does, it sure does. You have to have some grasp of installation, contracting, construction. You've got to be able to work well with design teams, architects, engineers. And you have to make sure that whatever you create on paper is realizable in the actual, and that you're not going to create something that really doesn't come together with all the drama and wow factor that it should have. You know, you don't want it to wind up looking dull and over-engineered. You want it to seem to float effortlessly. But getting an appearance of effortlessness takes a lot of effort.
And you don't want people to say, that's interesting.
No, I want them to go, wow. A lot better that way.
Now, how did you develop this interest in art?
Well, when I finished at KU in the early 80s, first thing I did was I got the heck out of Dodge. I packed my motorcycle and headed west for a while, lived in California, and then Alaska. No, I didn't ride the bike there. I took a fishing boat to Alaska. You know, that whole gig where you go to Alaska and work for a summer and make $50,000 and retire to Italy or something like that? Well, that must happen to somebody else, because it never happened to me. But I went to Alaska and worked as a fisherman for a while, and then when I was done with the West Coast, I lived in New York and then finally Connecticut for quite a while. And in Connecticut, I took a job as assistant director of Hillstead Museum. It's a museum of French Impressionism in Farmington. It's a suburb of Hartford. And this is really, I'd already been fascinated by the visual art world, even though I studied literature, which is an art history major at KU. I always hung out with painters and sculptors. I found them great company, you know, especially on a Friday night when we go down to the brewery or something like that. But in Connecticut, working at this museum, surrounded by works by Monet, Degas, Whistler, Piranesi, a whole range of works, and then doing cultural exchange programs with museums in New York and New Haven and Boston, it immersed me in the visual aspect of the art world in a way that I'd never been before, living in the Midwest. And after doing that for 3 years, I decided I should come home and eventually open a gallery representing exclusively Missouri and Kansas artists and make a go of that. And all my New York friends and Connecticut friends promptly told me I was out of my freaking mind. You know, they didn't believe any real talent existed east of the Hudson, and they certainly didn't believe collectors existed here either. And over the, 16 years since Leopold first opened, we've proven them wrong, though the beginning was kind of rough. So that's how.
So you've also lived in England. And Spain?
That's right, Costa del Sol.
What did you gather from all of your travelings and your experiences in different countries?
Well, that was before I really settled down. That was when I was writing novels on a consistent basis, as I still do. Just haven't had any novels published yet, only nonfiction. Although a screenplay I've written seems to be making advances in LA, but we'll see what happens with that. Well, living in these different places, I just love to drink in different cultures. And when I was free to do that before I had a family, it was fantastic to live a while in each country, any country that I wanted, because I could live very cheaply. I could always find a cheap place to hole up. I could usually find a job doing anything, if not in exchange for money, then in exchange for grub and a place to live. And it was just a great way to write all the time. Because in those days, you know, late 70s, early 80s, we didn't carry laptops. We carried notebooks. and I would write everything out longhand. But drinking in all this, of course, I spent time at the Prado. I spent time in London at the Tate, and in all the great museums of Tuscany and Venice and so forth. And drinking that in and bringing that back to America, it just broadened my horizons a bit.
So it was a struggle in the beginning.
Oh, sure. We almost went bankrupt 2 or 3 times.
Would you describe yourself as successful today?
Yeah, but I think I work too much to be successful. To me, my idea of success is where you work 20 hours a week and everybody else works their butt off for you. But I still work way too much as far as I'm concerned, because I have to. If you're going to advance all these artists' careers, then you're really responsible for their careers to a certain capacity. And sometimes the only person who can advance the career is the director, and you've got to work long hours to make that happen.
You mentioned a play that's being considered in Hollywood.
A screenplay, yeah.
A screenplay. What can you tell us about it?
It's a story about a veteran of the Iraq War who comes home suffering from severe PTSD. He was badly wounded and went through more than difficult firefights, losing people that were extremely close to him, both American and Iraqi. And this is communicated through 6 scenes that are set in Baghdad, but the bulk of the action's in America. And it was set aside by the Nickel Foundation of the Academy Award as one of the top 5% screenplays of the past year. And once that happened, agents began contacting me, and I guess 7 or 8 are reading it right now. We'll see where it goes. You know, none of that guarantees production, but it's a nice step in that direction. So sure, as much as my painters and sculptors are dedicated to their art, I mean, it's not like they have any choice. They have to create. I'm the same way where the written word is concerned.
So what pieces have you done that you're so proud of today?
As an art consultant?
As an artist.
One of my proudest achievements is what we did for H&R Block headquarters downtown. Because when Block hired for me for that job, they agreed with me that we should only be using Kansas and Missouri artists, and not just in the Kansas City metro area, but people that lived in rural areas of either state, smaller towns of either state, St. Louis, Wichita, Hayes. I didn't care where we found them, inner city, rural area, suburb. I threw open the book and I threw open the call for artists so that all artists of any stripe, whether they were self-taught, whether they went to an Ivy League art school, whether they went to Penn Valley Community College or some community college in Sedalia, it didn't matter to me. I was interested in the work first, and I wasn't that interested in the resume. A resume is impressive in certain instances, but there are sometimes you're going to find a given genius, and they may not have a resume in depth because maybe they didn't have the training to begin going through that process and building it up. What they do is they put their passion into their art, and they don't have time to do the networking that it takes to get into great juried shows. And by the time the whole process was done, I don't mind saying we found some exceptional artists, one of whom now has work with the Boston Museum of Fine Art. Another one, his work was acquired by Warner Brothers, and without them getting this opportunity through Block, I'm not sure that these other things would have happened. So it was a huge step for the whole community.
You've served as a consultant for Warner Brothers and for Steven Spielberg.
Spielberg acquired a piece through us because of our work on the National D-Day Memorial, and I was the consultant on that. For Warner Brothers, yes, I consulted for a set of a movie that they're making by Zack Snyder. He was the director of 300. This is a film about the Battle of Thermopylae. It's a new film they're putting out. And I consulted on sculptural aspects for the sets for the new film, which is called Watchmen.
Do you do any artwork yourself?
No, as the saying goes, I couldn't draw flies with my shoes off.
Is that true?
That's true. But I know good work when I see it, and I'd like to think I'm adept at taking an artist's work, if they're not quite happy with it, if they don't feel it's reaching that high plateau of exceeding expectations that all artists strive for, and maybe giving them feedback that's worthwhile, and maybe not. You know, what I had to say they can take or leave with a grain of salt. But I view my job as that of an editor. Most editors don't consider themselves creative writers. Now, I'm a designer for sure, but as far as the raw creation of artwork, no way. That's not one of my talents.
What do you design?
Well, I had a large hand in designing the sculpture for Spence Center, and then 2 of the key pieces in the Block lobby. And then several of the pieces that were site-specific commissions at Block, the artists conferred with me about size, perspective, medium, a whole host of issues. So I collaborate in that instance, but you're never going to see my name on a plaque because it's the artist's work. I mean, no more than you see an editor taking credit for a novel written by one of the great writers they might represent. You know, they stay in the background, that's their job. That's my job. Because an artist sometimes gets so close to their work and so burned out that he or she can't see the final few details that'll take it from a piece that is really doing well to a piece that is great. And that's my job, and to be honest, it's the job of most art consultants.